Everybody, it's Tuesday, June 26th, and we are right here, right now, together, listening and creating the Voice of Bold Business Radio's program 160, always on stage. What does that actually mean? Well, I was thinking about it as I was preparing for the show over the weekend, and it doesn't matter if people are watching us or not, if we know they're looking at us or not, we lead by example, because what we do when nobody's looking is influencing and informing what we're doing when people are looking. And boy, isn't it easier to just fall back on autopilot and say, here's where am in integrity, and here's how I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do it all the time. It creates way less stress and way less work of thinking about what situation we're in, and it allows us to be, I use the word more, here it comes, authentic, period. Well, period. That's the way that it goes. And to discuss that with us today, this concept of always on stage goes more than just that, just that. It goes into the fact that the message that goes with the way that we act either reinforces or detracts from our body language and our intentions and how we're coming across. And Elizabeth Bachman is going to talk to us about this and all things related to our presence and presentation and messaging, because we all have a message as leaders. We all have a message that when we are clearer about, we can articulate more and other people can buy in with much more ease. Elizabeth Bachman, she is here today and she is helping executives. She's helping entrepreneurs. She's helping authors. She's helping speakers. She's helping them master a message that brings funding, allies, and recognition. By the way, she particularly enjoys working with leaders who have big ideas and want to present at industry conferences or a red dot of a TEDx stage. As a speaker trainer, Elizabeth is passionate about helping you and me shine on any stage. You'll get to meet her right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Elizabeth, welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. Yay.
Yeah. And we met at a conference where we were both giving different presentations across an entire week.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really, it's so much fun to go and hear other speakers and to watch speakers. And then you see the ones like Jess who goes, okay, she knows what she's doing. We need to talk. We need to stay in touch. And, sometimes I'm watching speakers and saying, there's some things they could do to help themselves out. And then I watch the speakers and say, this one I can just listen, sit back and learn. So that's what I loved about you, Jess.
Thank you. What an amazing compliment. And I appreciate that very much. I do think we should also give a shout out to Tony Wilkins, who facilitated the event that we met at, because he's working with creating stages for speakers to come on all the time and is somebody who is potentially useful to know, especially because he works while he's going virtual more and more. He's actually building and has a really strong existing community in California, as I believe, where you are.
Yes.
Yes.
We actually both live in San Francisco. So I've been to his favorite bar, didn't have the vodka. I had the scotch, but
Ooh, that would be tough for me. Scotch, vodka. I think I would have to try both and find out which I liked better, because I like spirits in general.
Yes.
But you're a Scotch girl.
I wish I liked vodka, because there's so many cool vodka drinks, but that's okay. I'm a Scotch gal. Let's just put it. Goes back to those Scottish ancestors, I guess.
There you go. Well, that's okay. I have a bourbon drink, and sometimes people put Scotch in it instead of that. So I'm telling you, you can get pretty creative that way too. And you are one to be creative. I mean, taking something that you love and that you're passionate about and going, all these people have these great messages and they're not doing a very good job communicating them because I can't understand what they're saying. And if I can't, whether I know them or not, whether I'm in their industry or not, I wonder if the people in their industry, I wonder if the people that they're speaking to actually know what they're talking about. And I know I can help them. So when I read your bio and I've checked out a lot of your things and we've seen each other speak, that's what comes to mind is, yes, the clearer we are with our message, the better. And I think we should start with message, because then maybe we can bring it into every action of our life, provided you think that's an okay way to go as well.
Sure, sure. And I started out in opera. I was an actor, then I was a director, then I started directing opera singers, and I spent 30 years doing that. And boy, if that's a message, it's all about the ideal is when you can go out on stage and just be a channel for your message. And if you're an opera singer, you're being a channel for Mozart and let Mozart sing through you. If you're a speaker, you're being a channel for whatever it is that inspires you, gets you going, gets you excited. It's to be a channel. My part is to teach you the craft so that you don't actually drown people with that. It's sort of like if you have a message from somewhere up above that your inspiration, if you gave it to people straight, it would be like they're trying to drink out of a fire hose. And so my job is to put it together, to help you put it together so that you take the fire hose and hone it into something that people can accept, would love, so that it's like a cool glass of water on a hot day. Or sometimes you get it down so fine that it's like that liquid that you put on a plate of silver and etch a filigree and everything in between. So the best part of my job is when I see one of my people who's already figured out what to do with their hands and where the words fit and so forth, and they've mastered the craft, and they could go out and be a channel for the art of presentation.
Ooh, art.
That makes me all excited.
Everything that we do or create or share is a work of art. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about creativity and the fact that the 10,000 hour rule, of course, that Malcolm Gladwell revitalized, if you will, is a little bit of a misnomer, because now there's this essence, this expectation that when I put in the time, I will be great. And that is so not true. It is not, I mean, it's, are we making it autopilot, something that we're comfortable with, or are we exploring and figuring out more that we can go into, deeper, more conversational? And I could go on and on about that. And I'm curious for you, what was your path around that? When you, being an opera singer, for example, going out on stage, when did you were like, I can do this. This can be my profession. I can be involved.
So I was never a singer. I was a director. I was an
you said actor and I messed it up in my brain. I apologize.
No, actually that's a common assumption.
Okay.
I often think of it being dedicated to the overall art of great communication, since I first walked on stage at the age of 5, and my mom said I was the best damn bunny rabbit that ever graced the stage of the Hillside School, and I was hooked.
Yes.
Applause is one of the most addictive drugs there is. But then I realized that eventually in college, I figured out that I didn't have to be an actor. I was actually a better director than I was an actor. I'm an oldest child. So when I told my little sisters that I was going to be a director instead, they said, well, duh, you boss everyone around anyway. So give up.
I'm an oldest child. I get that.
Yeah. Well, and we're oldest children. We're right, aren't we?
Always. We so are.
Yeah,
Don't they call you all the time and share their woes and their celebrations, and that's where they want their advice from still?
Well, no.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I wish. Those were the days. Anyway.
So where we fit in, and
so I was a director in theater,
mm-hmm.
and then moved to New York. I wanted to be in the big city and started over and just by accident fell into a job with an opera company, that a little bitty touring opera company where I was 50% of the staff, and I drove the truck and swept the stage, and I, did basically half of it for hardly any money. And I knew I was home. I knew that was it. I grew up listening to opera, and my parents loved it. My grandparents loved it. And my grandmother spoke 8 languages. So my grandmother was very much a lady of good, cultured Western European education. In those days, it didn't occur to anybody that there was anything beyond English, French, German. But so we all studied languages as well. And so here was opera, which is all about storytelling, which I've been doing my whole life, and music, theater, travel, languages. I get to be a citizen of the world and travel the world and get paid to make something great. And so, and then when I switched to teaching presenters, then I switched to business. It turns out that the skills you need to sell a song are pretty much the same skills you need to sell a product or a service, or within a company to sell an idea.
Because it's a production.
Yeah, and it is a sales conversation. Let's say it's an enrollment conversation.
Production.
Everything boils down into an enrollment conversation. What do you want them to do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want them to do with the information you're giving them?
And that's a big deal. We think we have information. We think we can just have a conversation, and we think the other person will pick up on our cues. Another thing that we tend to think, and I'm saying we bigly and generally, is that everybody wants to know what we know. So whatever I have to say is the right thing to say in the moment. Boy, are those 2 big myths.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's also so much about, rule number 1 is, who is your audience? Who needs to know what you have to say? Within a company, then you pretty much know who your audience is, unless you're speaking externally. And then if you're speaking at a conference or on a TEDx stage, or if you have a big idea, you still have to consider who's listening, or who do you want to have, who needs to hear this? Yeah.
Oh, and that's an interest. Okay, so sticking with rule number 1, who's your audience? The message, when carefully crafted and produced for the most impact, then depends on the recipients, the audience, how they are going to perceive what's being said. And then if we know who our audience is for this message, when we get up on stage, it's really important to know who of that audience is actually in the stage, because it gives us a little bit of freedom, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It boils down to, I mostly talk about strategy, script, and style. So 3 things. And strategy is, if you know what it is you want to, let's say you're selling, because that's the one that has the most immediate impact.
Right.
It works for selling an idea, but say you want to enroll the audience, you need to know who needs it, who wants it, who needs it, and where are they first if you're going to be a speaker. So you're going to find them. And then once you've found them and you know who you want to hang out with, you tailor your script to speak to that particular audience. And then style comes in with the delivery, your delivery style, because only 7% of what people perceive about you comes from your words. And the other 93% is, what do you look like? How do you deliver it? Your charisma, if you will.
Exactly. All right. So we have a question from Mike, #VBB Radio. Keep those questions coming for us. We'll work in as many as we can on this program in the time that we have. So Mike is asking, enrollment sounds like an entirely different paradigm than sales. Will you please elaborate on that?
Yes. So sometimes sales can feel very outward focused, as in, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. It's the classic cliche of the used car salesman who's all about making money and will sell it to you whether you want it or not. Those are not the people I work with. So if you're a speaker and you're just about doing the numbers, I'm really not the coach for you. What I work with people who have something important to say or something important to deliver and that will really help people, that really believe in what they're talking about. Therefore, what you want to do is enroll people into your idea. And really it's enrolling them rather than selling them something. It's enrolling them into the idea that they can invest in themselves through hiring you.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's an investment, it's an enrollment conversation for them, investing in themselves, their business, their future, their relationship, whatever it is. It's how is this going to benefit them? And I'll tell you, speakers say to me all the time, yes, but I have to give all this information and I have to teach them all of this. But I like to think of myself as a figure of hope. So if you think of yourself as a speaker, your job as a speaker is not, not to teach them what you know, because you can't do it in 20 minutes, 90 minutes, half a day. Your job is to teach them how to invest in themselves and solve their problem through hiring you. So if you can show them that there's a solution to their problem and you can help them find it, then you are a figure of hope. If you're selling anything, you're selling them the hope that they can solve their problem through investing with you.
And so we're talking about intangibles, service products, not physical products, or does it work for that as well?
Products too.
Okay.
You go into the clothing store and the hope is I'm going to look fabulous if I put on this outfit. You go to the car salesman and say the hope is this car is going to get me where I need to go and we're going to have fun doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's the same. It's a product or service. If it's an idea, the hope is, say you're on a TEDx stage, the hope is this is going to change the world. And this is going to change the world. And this person is showing me something I never thought of. One of the first TEDx speeches I ever saw was about, instead of building a house, grow a house. And I have never been able to forget it. It was about 5 years ago. Grow a house instead of build a house. What a cool idea. So you are still enrolling people into your point of view, if you will.
Okay. So we're talking about sharing something that's inside, important to us, that we value for some reason, that we've decided to stand behind, adopt, hitch our own mission to, and then figure out how to find the people, because we've done the research, talk to the people in a way that they can hear and understand so that they can evaluate for themselves whether or not they also would like to hitch their vision to the one that we have. Yeah. And because they value something similar to us.
Yeah. They call me the star maker for speakers. So hitch your wagon to my star.
I love it. Yeah. Very good. So thinking about this, let's talk about the really common thing. I talked about a couple of myths that presenters, we put ourselves at the center and it's all about us. And in fact, we always hear but it's not about us. It's about them. It's about them. It's about them. Yeah. So what are some tips that you have that allow us to flip we know what we know, and how do we help other people recognize that it would help them, that it would serve them?
Right. So that's, that's the strategy, the script, and the style. Mm-hmm. Strategy is who needs it. It's about them. The script is, as you're writing the script, make sure you've got somebody with outside eyes who can be evaluating it and who can say, well, why do we care? Why should we? Because and no one can do this. There are people I pay to do this for me because, we all do this because
we all do this. Yep.
We're too close to it. If we know it, I have someone who goes through and says, wait a minute, there's a connection missing. And I go, well, I know that. He goes, yeah, but we don't. So it's the script, then using the words and the style. And then the style is the delivery style. And really what I love about this is the best cure for stage fright I've ever come to, because if you get nervous, and we all do, even experienced speakers can be knocked back into it. I had one a couple of months ago where suddenly I was doing new material in front of a new audience, which is the market that I'm right in my target market. And I was shaking and I just made myself breathe, and I asked one of my colleagues, I said, could you tell I was shaking? She said, the speakers in the audience, your fellow speakers noticed it, but the rest of them didn't. Phew. Whew. And the key is, the exercise I love is, think of it as if they're guests at your party. And let's say this is an enrollment conversation, a sales conversation. What kills us as presenters is if we're thinking, oh my God, they're gonna think I'm stupid. They're gonna think I don't know what I'm doing. They're gonna think this is nonsense. Have you ever had those, Jess?
Always. And to this day, and I'm like, ooh, look, butterflies. I'm in the right place at the right time. And today I'm going to grow.
Yes. Well, what I love, the thing is that when all those voices are chattering in the back of your head, and I don't know about you, I don't have a voice. I have a whole choir. So it's singing at me back here. I am by definition not communicating because I'm stuck sort of here in my head. So if I think about it as it's for them, and the service I'm offering, I offer a service, is it's like they're guests at my dinner party. And the service I'm offering is dessert. So the information I'm giving it's the appetizer and the main course and the side dish and all of that. But the best part, the opportunity to work with me and go further, is the dessert. So I tried to picture myself coming out of the kitchen with some fabulous cake, and the expression on their faces when they say, ooh, looks for comment. So if you think of it kind of as a dinner party, then you could make it about them. And what is it they knew? And here I have something so amazing for you. I truly believe in what I offer. So I can say there's something amazing and you're going to love this. This is going to really help your business. I've helped so many other people's businesses. This will help your business too. And, it's, if you think of it about them and you think, welcome to my party, and invite them in to your party. And also there are a bunch of other exercises around that I actually started doing with opera singers, and it's the same sort of thing.
Yep. You know, it's making me, okay, so I don't know about you, and I know you do, you're constantly learning. Where you're constantly learning is the part that I don't know about you. For me, I listen to podcasts and I listen to people talk all the time. I listen to how information is organized as I'm listening to those podcasts. I also read. And when I'm reading, the back of my brain in both scenarios is, well, here's how it fits. Here's how it fits. This is kind of, is it free flow or is it formatted or whatever? And I find that interesting because when I'm talking about production, right? When I'm talking about the message and how do I get that message out and how do I craft that message, goes beyond the talk that we're doing in front of people. It goes into, we get to practice before and after being on that stage too, right?
Oh yeah. You gotta practice.
And yes, there's an element of looking in the mirror, standing in a room, having your, standing up, dressing the way you want to dress. In fact, after our shows today, our live stream here and the one I'm recording for Friday, I am practicing for a conversation, a talk I'm giving from a stage on Thursday. And so I'm going to be doing that stuff. But here's the other thing that I'm doing. I am looking at every single thing since I got the gig, since I decided what was going to be talked about, since I decided what the message was going to be. How does it show up in my life? How does it show up? And you're going to, don't laugh, when I'm brushing my teeth. How does it show up when I'm chewing my food and having a sales conversation over lunch? How does it, when I reflect on my day and I'm going over whatness is to be done? And once a week, when I'm looking at the bigger picture and the planning stages, what is going on with that? This actual development. So we have things we can say, but unless we're really thinking about its purpose and we're using that purpose in more than just being on stage, I kind of think we're faking it and we're pretending to be something we're not. What do you think?
This is a great question. And this is one of the things you mentioned when we were speaking earlier, and about how can we always be on stage. And I really love this, because actually, rule number one is it's always about them. So if you take that into your personal life, it's about them. Make sure that your spouse you're paying attention to what's happening to them. The times I get when I'm yakking away on my thing, I'm not paying attention to what's happening on the other side of the table. It's like, oh, whoops, sorry. And so, or if you're talking to a friend and they need help and you can provide things. One of the other things that I do all the time is connect people. It's like one of my superpowers, if you will, connecting people. Yay, I know. I
love when people claim their superpowers.
Yes, yes. So when I'm talking to somebody and they say, oh, yes, well, I'm looking at this, and this, and I'm always going out and I say, so what are you looking for? How can I help you? What do you need? Mm-hmm. Our mutual friend, Tony Wilkins, has two great phrases, and I will happily give him credit. He says, what do you need and how can I help? Mm-hmm. And I used to say it longer, but I've actually adopted Tony's phrase of what do you need and how can I help? Even if you're talking to somebody who you think is playing in a much bigger sphere, there may be people I could do that. So by recommending people, thinking about who would be helpful for you, what are you looking for? And then say, okay, I'm going to keep an eye out for you. That's the way I live my life. And to say, if I'm going to talk about something, I try not to geek out about the things that I can geek out about. I try to think, what's going to be interesting for you?
Got it. Okay, so here's a question from our Scott here, #VBB radio, everybody. And in addition to that, you can also send us email. You can send us an email before, during, or after the show to vbbradio@reddirection.com. So use that hashtag. Eva's on that. She's also checking email. She might not know she has access to the email, but they'll come to her. Now you know, Eva. It's the small things in life we talk about, we implement, and we connect the dots when it makes sense to, sometimes live in the moment. And our Scott is asking this question. You say, know your audience. What role does know yourself play?
Very good question. That has to come first, because when you're on stage, whether you're a speaker or an actor or a singer, it's still coming from you. And, you mentioned the A word, authentic.
I did.
It's become a cliche. Cliches become cliches because there's truth behind them. So who are you truly? And what makes it real? What makes your eyes light up? Sometimes I'll be talking to a speaker, working with somebody. And for instance, when I was just starting out, one of my very first clients was a woman who is the general director of a foundation that does research on drugs. And I kept saying, what's the best part of your job? What's the best part of it? And she was just all into the how. And I was looking for the why. And then finally she said, the best part of my job is that we work with kids who have this disease. And there are kids now who go to their prom and dance. 10 years ago, they would have been at their prom in a wheelchair. We did that. And her eyes lit up as she said that. I said, okay, that's what you're going to talk about. Every time you introduce yourself, this is what we do. Talk about that, because that's what's going to make you go, that's what I'm excited. So finding what's authentic in you is the key. What gets you excited? And then when you're speaking, this is part of the style, instead of just giving information, I tend to work with a lot of very, very smart people who know a whole lot about something complicated. And it's just the temptation is to just give a lot of information. But that's not what gets people enrolled. It's what gets you excited. You want to say, yes, this is why I do what I do. When I watch one of my clients go out on stage and just nail it, I go, yeah, and then I can think back to that and channel that emotion and think, oh, this is why I do what I do. And when I talk about it, I touch that emotion again. It is authentically me. And it is a piece that I have deliberately added to my speech because I know it's what makes people respond. So it's kind of, there's art and craft there.
You're always on stage. This is program 160, The Voice of Bold Business Radio, with our special guest, Elizabeth Bachman. And we're talking about all kinds of things. And now we're going to expand a little. We've been talking about what we do on stage. We've been alluding to the things that we do off stage. We've been talking about the strategy, hold on, I'll get it. I wrote it down, the script. And then you call it enrollment. I was going to say the selling, but that's not the third S, is it?
Style.
Thank you, style. See, I still have things to learn too, everybody. And this is practice. It's conversation. It's say it out loud, say it back, reflect it. Did we internalize it correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Style. So let's talk about style. And let's talk about style not on the stage. We have another audience question that we'll lead this second half of the program with. So hashtag VBB Radio. It's from Jackie. What about the digital stage? Social media, webinars, the things that we do online that are forever frozen in time. Even though we grow and change, how do we make a synergy from the past us to the future us, or the current us on the way to the future us?
Let me see if I'm understanding and Jackie, please, if you're on chat, just let us know if I'm actually answering your question. The inner and authentic, so the delivery style and who you are, when you're on the digital stage, yes, you should always be yourself, using the same techniques you use if you're live, just keeping it smaller so you don't overwhelm the smaller frame that we're in. And if there's parts of you that are on the web that don't reflect who you are now, delete them, make them private. Or you can make them private. You can, if you're on someone else's podcast, you can say, please take that off because that's not what I'm doing anymore. And the other thing is flood the internet with who you are now. And if nothing else, that buries it.
One of the things I like about what you're saying, and we can totally build on this, is that it's easy. Like, think back to our families. We all had a role. You and I both identify with the oldest child, so we were a little more bossy than everybody else. For example, we have this label. People in our families label us. We're the cute ones. We're the ones that you appease. We're the ones that are going to be funny. We're the ones that are going to be the wallflowers. Whatever our labels in our family are, right? And so that happens to us online too. And it's already hard to change in our family, because I definitely am not the person I was at 20, and I'm definitely not the person I was at 30. And now that I'm 40, I'm looking at that going, yeah, And there are themes, though, that when we are truly doing what we like and we're picking out the pieces that are important to us, that theme of importance stays. And so even though what we do may drastically change, one day we may be a hairstylist, the next day we may be a professional, we may have been going to school and now we're a psychologist and we're trying to build a business. Those things seem disparate, yet what we loved and about being a hairstylist is probably what we love that took us to being a psychologist. And so that theme stays. And when we know what that is and we know what we're sharing, I think it's easy to say, yeah, the new stuff ties in with the old and we're this next level. And people want us to be the same way we always are. The thing is, we all change, them and us. And so when we are grateful and filled with gratitude and say, hey, check out what I'm doing now, I'm really excited. Just our excitement in sharing that actually is a type of enrollment because we get those likes, we get the comments, we get the love, we get the cards in the actual physical mail, we get the phone calls after people see what we're doing online. And they want to help us. Like what you said earlier, that Tony's ism, what do you need and how can I help?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think that's a part of it. And where else could we go? So yes, we've changed. Yes, we might even have a completely different message, but there's a piece of us, or there's something that's the same in both, and that's us. And I think that goes back to Scott's question, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's sort of, it's the art and the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Art is what's inside us, and the message, and as the message evolves, because your speech is a living art. Speeches are always changing and growing, but you still use you can use same materials over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Phrases that I've used over and over. And then the craft of it is, how do you actually shape it and use it?
And I think part of that craft too is like the concept of sound bites. We live in a sound bite world, right? In the green room, I was telling you about this talk that I'm giving, and what's being portrayed out there is one sound bite about me that really, sure, it's a part of who I am. Sure, it makes me have the knowledge I have today, but at the same point in time, it's not what my message is going to be when I get on that stage.
Yeah.
And how do you overcome that? How do you create the sound bites that you want to draw people in? Because I think our digital presence that flooding you were talking about, this might be a way to help, but I don't know how to make a sound bite well. Do you?
Well, part of what I do is whenever I do a live speech, I ask people, what's the most interesting thing you learned today? And they will, and then whatever and it comes out. Most of the time, there's a lot of repeats. They all just say this, they say the same thing over and over. And I go, okay, I'm going to do more of that. It's testing your market. Sound bites, remind me to talk about jazz too.
Jazz. Okay, got a note.
Okay, so for sound bites, also, that's what you're using if you're in a sales conversation, an enrollment conversation, sorry. For people who are speaking one-on-one, and you need to convince somebody to do something, then you're not going to sit there and talk. Please don't sit there and talk to them for 20 minutes. You're going to ask a lot of questions, but you'll know more or less what their questions will be. And so then you have your sound bites prepared. Most importantly, have your sound bites prepared for the objections. We all know what the objections are, and it falls into three categories. It's either it's too expensive, or sort of money, time, and success. Too expensive, takes too much time, or that's fine for you to say, but it won't work for me.
Yep.
So prepare a story that will say what it's going to work, how it's going to work, and how it's not going to work. I have a client who is an opera singer, and he used to be a football player. So we're working on, because he was a professional in the NFL, and then he got injured, so he went out and went back to school and became an opera singer. We're working on, what did you learn playing football that informs you when you're singing in Tosca? What do you know? What did you see? What did you learn? How does that connect? So that when he does he gets called for interviews all the time. When he does an interview, he can tie it back to the thing he's actually promoting, which is the opera company that's hired him. What he's actually promoting is come to the show. And so it's really about connecting the dots and using the sound bites, preparing the sound bites. So if he's doing a church concert, he says, I'm doing this concert because this is the church my parents went to and my mom wanted me to do it. And when mom wants you to do something, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things like that.
Yes. So it's always fun. This is one of my learning points is I think about objections, but I never really think about objections. And so hearing you say that, knowing the known objections, we've all had the conversations and somebody did not show interest. So did we take one step further and ask, what makes you uninterested about this? Because then we can figure out which of those categories of typical objections that you were sharing, they fall into buckets, which one that is, so we can prioritize. And then we can say, oh, well, and did you know? Here's this particular piece too, because sometimes we don't know the objections, but that having that not only is a soundbite for one-to-one conversation, it's also something that goes back to what we present, how we're producing it, the order of the things that we say and the words that we use, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. And often you can put in a story that tells the story. It's more interesting to tell a story than stories engage people more than facts. So if you tell a story about how you worked with somebody and first she said, I don't know, I can't say that joke. And I said, trust me, do it, do what I told you, give it a try. And then she says, I did what I told you and I made $8,000 in 3 minutes. Woohoo.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so that's
we're getting
story.
So how about
the story I tell? Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just say that is one of the stories. That's the punchline of one of the stories that I tell, which illustrates one of the points I try to make. So I have woven it in, instead of just telling people you've got to think about your delivery style. I tell the story that illustrates it, and then people will say that. And then sound bites are just phrases. Like one of my favorites is, sales is like sex. Nothing happens until somebody gets excited.
Yes.
So if you just think of it as, this is why studying and planning how you're going to tell the story, in some cases it's planning a seduction, seducing someone who's willing. It's also like planning a seduction. You want to, get people excited.
Right. Exactly. And there's an element. I was at one of the women's leadership roundtables that I run here in person in the greater Denver area. We were talking about somewhat right there, but also somewhat, it's all in the news right now. So we had somebody from Brazil and we were talking about coming across the wrong way as women with confidence, or we're trying to enroll somebody. Sometimes we come across the wrong way and we don't intend to, or there are mixed signals. So I think we should bring that up. And she was really surprised. She goes, what are you talking about? We just flirt all the time in Brazil. This is kind of crazy. And everybody just knows it. Well, she was in the US and she had an experience and and somebody came back to her and said, do you have feelings for me? And this was a professional situation. And this person came back and had that question. And I was like, I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, I know she's not alone. I know there are other people that this happens to. And so being able to deal with the rest of it, how we look, what we're saying, how we're coming across, I think reinforces what our intention is. And if we're unclear on our intention, then somebody might be unclear on our intention.
Yes. Well, and that also gets into knowing who your audience is.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I learned working professionally and, working in 5 languages is,
Oh, yeah.
something that works in Argentina doesn't work here. I ran a I ran a school in Austria for 11 years. It was a joint Austrian-American venture for German speaking and English speaking opera singers. And it was, woohoo, it was great fun. And there are things you can do, you can get away with in America that you don't want to get away with in Austria. And we were also in a different, it would have gotten away even less in Vienna.
Yeah.
We were in the state of Tyrol, where people are a lot more casual. And still, you have to know, if you're doing a pitch to an investor for your startup, this whole Silicon Valley grunge thing, you can't really show up in total grunge. You still want to look halfway decent. You don't want to show up in a 3-piece suit. But I see this all the time. Oh God, I see inventors and techies who have got some really cool idea, and they show up in their crappy, sloppy clothes. And even though it's a Silicon Valley grunge, there's an automatic assumption about the kind of person you are by how you look. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but it is. It's just what human beings do.
It's the elephant in the room when we talk about this, when we're talking about our intention, when we're having a conversation. Being misunderstood is equally as much our responsibility as the other person's responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also really matters in, we are more and more a world of people from all over the place. Mm-hmm. I live in the city of San Francisco. There's, a lot of my listeners do not have English as a first language. A lot of my clients do not have English as a first language. So there's a lot about how do you speak to somebody in a way that if they don't have the same background that you do, how can you still be understood? Mm-hmm. That's actually a lot of what I do.
Connection too. Okay. So, and this is the stuff, the last 2 points we were talking about around sound bites, and then this segue into intention leads us up to, we get in our own way sometimes. We get in our own way. So what have you found useful to you and your clients that allows people to actually recognize when they're getting in their own way? And then decide if they want to do anything about it or not. But at least they know.
That's a good question. So basically having a mentor, having a coach, having a trainer. So I have coaches who sort of catch me from time to time and say, don't get too comfortable. That's my thing, is I'll get too comfortable and I'll just natter along, and then words come out of my mouth that sort of bypassed my brain and went straight to my mouth. Don't get too comfortable, get out there. And I also have coaches who will kick me in the butt when I need it. So it's mostly like, don't get too comfortable, and to have somebody who can call you out. And as with everything, a child doesn't learn that the stove is hot until they burn their finger. So sometimes you have to screw up and then say, okay, pick yourself up and keep on going. And the universe will send us a reminder from time to time. And
truth to that.
I don't know if that's ever happened to you, Jess, but
oh, well, okay. Let me count. Oh, let me count the ways. Let me count the times.
Yeah. So learning how to get back up and make amends if you need to, and say, oops, I didn't mean to say that. But
right.
Things like that. And so having somebody from the outside who can say, do you know you're doing, were you aware that you did this? You did it.
Right.
Okay,
so now we've got to get into the question that everybody, as soon as they heard the word TED and TED Stage and speaker training, I have a couple of questions, and I'm snagging Diana's. Diana, #VBB Radio, has asked, for someone who'd love to give a TED Talk, what are your specific tips and advice about where to start and what to avoid?
Well, let's see. See if I can get it down to 2.
Okay.
it needs to be an original idea. It needs to be one idea, and it needs to be something that they probably haven't thought of before. It can be a take on an old idea, but it needs to be something that's new. That's what TED's all about. What's new? What's the new idea? So finding something original, and then what to avoid is rehashing old material. It can be something you've been talking about for a while, but it's got to be your idea and your original idea, and something that sort of stretches the boundaries a little bit. Have you ever thought of this? So have you ever thought of that? Things like that. Helping clients, and sometimes it takes time. That's the other thing, is to give yourself time, because it's a process, and figuring out what your idea is. Sometimes you have to go through. I had a client who went through 4 or 5 versions until we finally figured out what she thought she was going to talk about first was really not what she was talking about. And I after 4 or 5 revisions, I said, I don't think this is a speech. This isn't a speech about topic A. This is really a speech about topic B. If we approach it that way, and we have 12 minutes, sometimes you get 18, but mostly you get 12. Sometimes you only get 6. Then getting to the heart of it quickly.
Getting to the heart of it quickly, which means, and this ties us back to the beginning.
Practice.
Of we are always on stage. And when we're always on stage, when we practice off stage, when we are having that theme come through, what our message is in the situations that we are in come to play, which means it really is about simplicity. And simplicity is very underrated sometimes. And most of my experience in a sales pitch, in a collaborative opportunity, with clients that I ask questions of, and even me, when I'm asked questions by, my mentors and my coaches and my board, is, what are you actually saying, Jessica? Could you dumb this down? And so I think that too, when you say get to the heart of it, that's it. And that's the only thing. And everything we say revolves around that one thing. And we're like, why can't everybody keep up with us? And the answer is because they don't know what we know. They're not looking at it like we're looking at it. Yeah. And so it's up to us in this concept of simplicity to bring it forward and to have a conversation about this until we can get it to its simplest points that go back to what you were just saying about the intentions. What might people assume? What am I assuming? Can we remove those? How am I being perceived? How do I make that connection? So what are your thoughts on simplicity?
Well, actually, that brings me back to the jazz.
Yes, good. You got it.
Okay. I said, this would work. Is if you think of what your speech is, one of the things that happens to people all the time, I hear speakers always say, I don't want to be trapped in a script where I have to read every word. It has to be all the same. There are people who like consistency, and they'll do the script the same way every time. Ethel Merman did that for years on Broadway. And then there are people who need to be free. However, if you think of a simple outline, if you think of your speech like jazz, imagine you're doing a jazz song. There's a basic tune. So you can always keep it to the basic tune. And then you want to have a strong beginning, a strong ending, and the basic tune, but then you can elaborate and improvise depending on who's in the room. What's the situation? Who are you talking about? So that's any of that.
Great. What makes it bold? I'm very curious. What makes it bold to embrace the fact that we're always on stage?
That means you have to step into your spot, step into your power, to say, okay, I'm on stage, I'm here. You've got to step out on stage. you walk out of the bedroom in the morning, as you walk out of the house, as you walk into the office or a networking event or speaking, you are your product. You represent your product.
Ladies and gentlemen listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, this is program 160. And you're in the right place. You're in the right place for conversations about current problems and needs and obstacles that we face, and we're looking for inspiration, solutions, and ideas of how to tackle. Because when we take something that we're facing or thinking about and we can turn it on its head, we bring context from other people's walks of life, from the expertise and experience that they bring, we can shift. We may not want to, but we at least have the opportunity to go, now I understand and I can move forward or not. I can take that step or not because it's right for me. It's right for the business right now. That's what it means. Walking the walk, talking the talk to develop tenacity and sustainability within our organizations. Elizabeth Bachman shared so much information with us. There are going to be program notes put together along with links on the voiceofboldbusiness.com/P160. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P160. You can also search for Always On Stage. While you're there, or right after you've watched us live stream on YouTube or Facebook, leave a review, use hashtag VBB Radio, and make sure to continue this conversation. Elizabeth is around and wants to stay in touch and answer questions that you have. The Voice of Bold Business Radio team here at Red Direction, we want to do the same. We're here to keep this conversation going because it's us. How we act, what we do, the way we think defines what leading effectively is. And when we get the results, why wouldn't we want to share it? Because it's not going to work for everybody else, but they're going to be able to take it to figure out how it works for them, which that's the part that I love, the collaboration, the information. And by the way, that's just why the Voice of Bold Business Radio exists, because we get to build ideas. We get to have this conversation in so many different ways. So how will you apply? How will you change your thinking and integrate what we've looked at, talked about, and even experienced a little bit through Elizabeth's stories? Recognizing the fact we are always on stage.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.